Meet Mirai, a short and cute girl who wears red glasses. However, despite her appearance, this young lady is carrying a heavy burden. As the last surviving member of a cursed clan of spirit world warriors, she's tasked with taking out a Yomu, strange creatures that roam the human world. Apparently, there's an immortal high schooler who happens to be half Yomu, half human, and this Yomu is beyond the boundary. So, to take out beyond the boundary, she'll have to take him out. Hence, the girl ends up at the school. She's on the roof when that same boy, Akihito, sees her. He thinks that she's about to jump, so he rushes to the roof and tells her that a cute glasses-wearing girl like her shouldn't die. And from there, you guessed it folks, this dude has a glasses girl fetish. And while we won't be delving any further into this specific subtopic, let's just say he's quite hardcore about it. Mirai immediately does a swing and stabs him with a blood saber. Of course, since he's immortal, he doesn't die. Though Mirai already knew about that. The next few days are mostly about her trying to kill Akihito whenever she gets the opportunity, and Akihito is getting tired of it because even though he won't die, he still feels pain. So in return for letting him off the hook, he takes her to a dinner and tells her how painful it really is, having to keep up with all those sudden attacks. But even though she let him off the hook for today, she will attack again tomorrow. It was still just the beginning. Even though Mirai's goal is to kill him, they're gradually getting closer to each other. One night, when Akihito sees her injured because of a fight with Yomu, he even helps her with the band-aids. Of course he does. Mirai meets with the head of the Nase family, Izumi, and she advises her that she shouldn't get too close with the target. When Mirai meets Akihito, she tells him how the blood running through her veins is cursed, and he simply tells her that he's the same way. Things escalate very quickly from here on out. Izumi has a meeting with an interrogation officer named Miroku, and they talk about a hollow shadow. This shadow also had quite a history with Mirai, so Akihito thought that the reason she's here is because she wants to kill it. So by letting it possess his body, he helps Mirai kill the hollow. Unfortunately, he knew nothing about what Mirai really wanted, and he overdid himself with this one. The younger brother of Izumi appears together with their teacher Shizuku and a spirit world warrior yet fox, Yomu Ayaka. They help contain his now messed up disposition inside a barrier, but Akihito's Yomu nature gets the better of them, the barrier is destroyed, and he's also not in control anymore. When Mirai opens her eyes, the other three have passed out, and in front of her is Akihito, all possessed. She runs towards him and gives him a big hug, which somehow helps him revert back to his human state. And just like that, they're now even closer to each other. Though this event was still the beginning of what was to come next, the Yomu inside Akihito is a danger to everyone. Mirai started getting more acquainted with the youngest Nase sibling, Mitsuki. When Akihito is getting taken care of by Ayaka and Ai, Sakura and Mirai pay a visit. Apparently, just like how Akihito's Yomu state was weakened because of what happened, his human state is also weakened greatly. When the two leave, Sakura tells Mirai how she can just stay with Akihito if that's what she wants, but she isn't so sure considering how even if she was there, she wouldn't know anything about what to do. So in search of how she can help him and resolve the beyond the boundary situation, she and the Nase siblings are inside Akihito's apartment. I know I said I'm not going to talk anymore about the glasses girl fetish, but man, the guy was even taking notes after notes on how Mirai looked in glasses, and trust me, there's plenty of them. Later, Mirai talks to Izumi all alone in a cafe, and she tells her about a way she can help Akihito recover, and the beyond the boundary situation will also be resolved. However, she'd be using her own body to contain the Yomu instead, so there's no telling what would happen if she did that. Mirai understands, but she's ready to do it. At least this way Akihito Senpai won't have to die. So it happens. She faces off against beyond the boundary in the spirit world, and with all those memories creating all sorts of emotions inside her and an epic song playing in the background, she does it. Akihito wakes up from his slumber. He was in a coma all this time. He sees Mirai sitting by his side in those red glasses he always adored, and so the summer days continue, but unfortunately, before long, the man must come face to face with a rather shocking realization. While he and Mirai are in the club room, she tells him what happened. The Yomu that was inside of Akihito and how she got rid of it, but as her own body absorbed the Yomu, she simply disappeared. The Mirai standing in front of him right now isn't there after all. What Akihito has been seeing all this time was nothing but a dream. So when Akihito wakes up, this time for real, only Mirai's glasses are on the seat. It was the truth. She had indeed disappeared. The young Nase siblings tell him the same thing about how she simply vanished. When he encountered Izumi, he realizes how it was her who told Mirai about this way. The man is now depressed. With a sad face, he's on his way home. One of Mirai's familiars, Sakura, asks him about Mirai, but he has no answer. When he's home, he takes a good look at his phone and stumbles across a message by Mirai, a message she sent before heading out to deal with Beyond the Boundary. It simply stated how he can live and die like a normal person now, and how she doesn't find it unpleasant. A meaningful word considering how Mirai's catchphrase is calling everything unpleasant. Anyways, this only increases his depression. But when something supernatural happens, the weakened Beyond the Boundary simply retreated into another dimension to battle Mirai while simultaneously absorbing the supernatural energy from the real world. There's a giant orb-like dimension in the sky, and the guys are suddenly outside. There's Akihito running toward it only to be stopped by Sakura. The younger Nase siblings also show up, and the teacher's there too. And to top it off, they have letters stating how Mirai is still alive and they need to meet up in the club room. So they all head over there. Apparently, it was Akihito's mother who sent those letters, and we can see her enter the club room in the most uncanny and bold way a mother can. She uses a mecha to enter, and once outside, she's in her usual flashy outfit. She explains how not only is Mirai alive, she's fighting a long, strenuous battle inside that bubble they saw in the sky. She's up against Beyond the Boundary, and if the Yomo were to win, it may very well spark the end of the world, and that's why this situation just can't be ignored. Now, using a Yomu stone which was created during Mirai's clash with Beyond the Boundary, he's going to head up there and help her. His mother also tells him about a puppet version of Akihito, which Mirai's strong emotions ended up creating. It's also inside that bubble, and he's got to catch that too. He finally asks her how she knows all of this, to which his mother simply dodges the question. He leaves by telling her how he expects all the answers someday. Just then, Izumi also enters the scene and tells Akihito to stop. After all, remember, he is no longer immortal. But he tells her how he's willing to do anything for a bespectacled beauty. And so it begins. As a melodramatic song plays in the background and the visuals hasten, Akihito dashes forth, jumps up, and reaches for the place Mirai has been fighting inside all alone all this time. Once inside, he grabs her and hugs her with all of his might. She asks him why he's come. By doing so, he just spilled water all over everything she'd done. But he's even more emotional. He never wanted her to sacrifice herself in the first place. He would never want a future with her by his side. Why couldn't she understand that? He refuses to accept what she was doing. For the first time, he tells her how it was her who was being rather unpleasant. So, left with no choice but to fight the now enraged Beyond the Boundary together, Akihito prepares himself to take on all the emotions he had been suppressing this whole time. When his own darkness emerges in front of him, he simply asks her to shut her eyes. And when she's asked to open them back, there's an insane, almost ridiculous number of Yomu. So, they gotta fight. And finally, Akihito fights Beyond the Boundary, or rather he fights himself and takes the Yomu back inside him. Thus, in turn, going back to who he was before, but only this time, he's accepted the darkness in his heart and is now content with his existence. During the final moments, when the two have taken care of things, Mirai is shedding tears as she puts his hand on her head and asks him to pat. She ends up vanishing just like that, yet again. Things settle down and everyone goes back to their lives. Akihito keeps reminiscing about Mirai holding her blood ring in his hand. Though as he's on his way back from school after a hard day, something unexplainable happens. He rushes to the roof and finds Mirai standing there in silence. She isn't wearing her glasses, so he presents them to her. Little did he know, this wasn't the end, but another beginning. That's right, folks. Now for the next few minutes, let's talk about what happens next, aka the sequel movie. It's been 1 year since what happened on that day. Of course, Mirai's returned, but as it turns out, she's lost all of her memories of those incidents, Akihito, or any of her past. Akihito and Mitsuki continue to watch over in the club room. They're the only two members left since Mitsuki's brother has graduated. Akihito is emotionally stressed, but he sees this is better for Mirai's sake. Now she won't have to live with her painful past and can simply start a new life. Though when Sakura asks her about which club she wants to join, she ends up replying the literature club, and when she asks if it's because of Akihito, she blushes. Even though she may not have the memories, the real Mirai was still inside there. She tries reaching out to Akihito, but he pretends that they never knew each other and continues to avoid her. But this wasn't all. When Mirai is on her way together with Sakura, they're attacked by shadows, and a hooded one directly asks Mirai if she knows who she is. Unfortunately, Akihito and Hiromi save the day before things get ugly. Mirai continues to try and ask Akihito, but Sakura, Mitsuki and Hiromi continue to tell her that he's just a weird pervert with a thing for girls who wear glasses. Though they couldn't have hidden the truth for long, considering how Mirai ends up becoming aware of her blood powers. Mirai ends up becoming the vice president of the literature club. It's so Mitsuki and Akihito can protect her from the hooded figure. Meanwhile, Hiromi meets up with Ayaka and Ai. He's now taking over the Nase household, considering how Izumi is nowhere to be found. Ayaka is rather concerned because he's not as strong as his sister. Anyway, they needed to do something about those shadows and that hooded figure. Sakura tells Akihito that it isn't of any use. Mirai's curiosity of her past just keeps on increasing. He meets with her himself and further stresses his glasses fetish, but Mirai just ends up using her same old catchphrase. It's unpleasant. This was emotional for Akihito, considering how the real Mirai was still inside. Later, as they're in the same part where they shared a connection in the past, Mirai tells him about her blood ability and wonders if this is the reason why they can't be together. Though before the conversation gets any deeper, the hooded figure appears, but Mirai's blood prowess ends up melting her hoodie, thus in turn revealing her identity. It's Izumi. She grabs Mirai's face, looks her in the eye and says that she'll tell her who she really is. Hiromi also appears and the situation gets weirder, though Izumi doesn't hold back in her attacks and disappears after causing trouble. We then see a scene where Izumi is kneeling in front of another hooded figure. When the situation clears up for the time being and Akihito is back home, he's greeted by his mother, and after the usual gag, she states how she'll help him with the Izumi situation. Ayaka is going to have to intervene, considering how the older two Nase siblings are now going to kill each other. Back to Mirai, she's at her apartment when Akihito shows up at her door. He wants to talk, but when she's ready to leave with him, she receives a call from Akihito telling her that they must meet. As it turns out, the Akihito at her doorstep was fake. It's the interrogation officer Miroku and the man who's been pulling the strings. He takes time to manipulate Mirai into thinking that her original objective was to kill beyond the boundary, and it hasn't changed even now. Meanwhile, in a forest, Hiromi and Ayaka take on Izumi. It's a tough dilemma. Everything about Izumi raises further questions. Ayaka is ready to face her off. Instead of making her brother kill her older sister, she just teleports him. As for Mirai, she keeps getting consumed by darkness. Akihito is making his way there. Mitsuki and Shizuku also arrive. They try to hold her off, but they can't. Before long, the fight drags to the same place as Izumi and the others. As for the other hooded figure, he's apparently using Izumi as a vessel and reveals that all those shadows aren't Yomu, they're actually spirit world warriors who succumb to darkness, and if nothing's done, the same will happen to Mirai. Speaking of Mirai, or should I say evil Mirai, she's still trying to kill Akihito. In her mind, she sees her brother reminding her how their purpose in life is to kill beyond the boundary. But before she can finish Akihito, Hiromi attacks her, giving an amazing visual fight. As this goes on, Ayaka is defeated and she's seen falling from above. Fortunately, Hiromi is successful in talking some sense into Izumi. Well, she's also a victim in all of this after all, considering how she was also manipulated by that hooded figure. And then finally, we get to the climax. Akihito fends off as Mirai repeatedly tries to kill him. He keeps wondering about how to get through to her, and then suddenly something clicks. He lets her wound him and then uses that ring as a connection of some sort, and he himself enters her subconsciousness. He sees everything, how she and her mother were persecuted for being from the cursed clan, the hatred she always had to deal with, and the pain that came together with it. The only way to get her out of that darkness was love. So he does it again. He confesses his love and swears to protect her no matter the situation or circumstance. And just like that, Mirai comes to terms with her past. In the aftermath of this scene, we see Ayaka and Izumi, who are still alright but unconscious. The reason why Akihito's mother knows so much is because she's a gatekeeper between the two worlds, and it's her job to keep watch. Life returns to normal once again. Mirai and Akihito are now lovebirds, and Akihito is now a Chad who says he loves Mirai even when she's without her glasses. So, there you have it. That was the storyline of the two Beyond the Boundary movies. I do want to hear your thoughts on this movie, so don't forget to rate the comment section. Well then, with that said, be sure to subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next video.